So Mark Hanna is held accountable for the ways that a presidential campaign is run in our today's world. After I did some research on him, I found also a great interest in him and wanted to know why he was so important and how he forever changed presidential campaigns. He was a Cleveland native, and he was born into a family that ran a very successful grocery store in Columbiana County. They were huge supporters of Lincoln and were very outspoken Republicans. Once Hanna had grown up, he became a very successful businessman, and he started getting involved with politics back in Cleveland when he attended the Republican convention in Cincinnati. To me, Hanna reminds me of Jay Gatsby. On the weekends, Hanna spent his Sundays entertaining the prominent people who visited Cleveland, not for himself at his own expense, just to meet these people and just get to know them and put his influence on them and have them behind him. His first campaign involvement was with James A. Garfield, and he created a businessmen's club and traveled throughout Ohio to raise money for the campaign. He was known to use his own money in the campaigns to ensure that his candidate would win, so he would also earn the credit for ensuring that his candidate won. During Garfield's campaign, Hanna shared an apartment with William McKinley, and while they worked together on the campaign, they decided to form a partnership. After Garfield was assassinated, they decided to enact their partnership, and McKinley was going to run for president, with Hanna running his campaign. The partnership led to McKinley winning the election, and also by a large margin of over 600,000 votes, and it was all due to Hanna's campaigning. Before I can tell you about how Hanna changed campaigning, I need to describe how the campaigns were before him. In the early 1800s, propaganda and word in the newspapers was about the only way, or word of mouth, to get the information about a candidate out. And usually, they would hire a person to send out the information for them, and it was usually false and negative. Whoever was running for president did not actively campaign, they had someone hired for them, and they would work for them to do the campaign. So, there was a famous election between Jefferson and Adams, and it was actually looked at as a very negative election and campaign. Kerwin Swint of CNN stated, "As the slurs piled on, Adams was labeled a fool, a hypocrite, a criminal, and a tyrant, while Jefferson was branded a weakling, an atheist, a libertine, and a coward." Pretty much the only method other than speeches was used with that, but there weren't any other methods at that time as we use today. We use the campaigning, the posters, but then it was just usually false propaganda, his word against theirs, and that's what they used in the early 1800s. So Hanna changed all of this dramatically. He spent over $100,000 out of pocket for the campaign, and he brought forth the Front Porch Campaign. The Front Porch Campaign was due to McKinley didn't want to campaign away from his wife, so Hanna brought it to his front porch in Canton, and that's where his campaign started. And he raised $3.5 million of his own money and donations from his own business affiliates. So by his business partners, he was able to raise twice as much money as anybody else would have been able to. And he also campaigned through posters, spoons, and buttons, and this is where campaigning began to be broad and branched out from just the propaganda in the newspapers. Hanna was quoted saying that there are two things that are important in politics. The first is money, and I can't remember the second. He was a huge supporter of money in campaigning, and was pretty much known for money always wins. He wasn't for the people as much as he was for the money. And that was one of the negatives to his approach in campaigning. People thought that he didn't care about them and their needs, and only cared about the money aspect. People didn't think he was for the people. They also thought, why should they vote for a candidate who's run by a money-hungry businessman and isn't putting his own word out there? Hanna also made it look as if McKinley was just along for the ride, that maybe Hanna should have been the one running for president anyways and not McKinley. He was also a really big figure in the political cartoons. He was depicted by Bob Rich explains that he was the bloated, corrupt political boss representing the rich against the poor. And many historians didn't give credit to McKinley because they said he didn't do anything really. It was all Hanna, kind of the puppet master, as they said. And many people didn't support him. They thought he was a fool. But at the same time, those people that didn't support him and thought him a fool wanted him to be president. because they could see what his campaign skills had, how much money he could use, and they wanted him to run for president. And it showed a great impact on the people. Even though they didn't like him, they were willing to have him run their country. And today we always see his methods, especially with the spending money. Barack Obama's campaign in 2008 was over $740 million. That's an insane amount of money to spend on just campaigning alone. And the campaigns have made a big improvement because of Hannah's contributions. So to tie all this together, why should we care about campaigning? Without it, we would just vote for candidates because of race or hair color. We wouldn't be looking at morals or their beliefs or what they wanted to change in the country. So there is one thing to think about, and that is, what would a presidential election be like without the campaign?